Hello, everybody, and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Shriners Hospital Data Dive Show. A lot to get into, so a quick intro. As always, statistics are provided by FantasyNational.com. Amazing resource. It's what I used to hit Sam Burns this past weekend at the Sanderson Farms. It's helped me win quite a bit at DFS and all the sports book betting that I've had success at. It's an amazing tool, well worth the investment. Go check it out. I couldn't be able to do this without it. As always, links to my social media are in the description below the video. This is where you can find my betting card for the week. Any last minute advice or questions that you have regarding bets or DFS or anything, you can always reach out to me there. And then, like every week, chat is open. Want the interaction. Let me know if there's any bets that you're wanting to make, any data that you're wanting to see behind that tonight. As we dig into the data and look at the statistics model, rankings, and all that. What are you looking for? What statistics are you looking at? So join me in chat. We'll bounce some ideas off, and hopefully I can give you some good vibes and good information to continue the winning streak that we had from the Sanderson Farms. So with that, let's dig into the data for the 2022 Shriners. And as we do every week at the Data Dive Show, we are going to start with the tournament fact sheet. And unfortunately, and I'll use the term unfortunately, it's the same exact thing from last year's. We're still at TPC Summerlin, obviously. They just changed the dates. Still a par 71. Still says 7,255 yards. Same amount of average green size. Same number of water hazards, water in play, bunkers. Everything's the same. Everything's the same. They did add a couple of notes, which for tournament is non-issues or not noteworthy or anything. As we talked about last night, we're on bent greens. They're generally pretty fast. Bermuda rough, like we had at the Country Club at Jackson this past weekend. So nothing really new here. So with that, we can move on to Fantasy National with the same information that we had at our disposal last night. And I went ahead and have filtered this down for the last 6 months. And the reason I'm starting to do that, especially in this swing part of the season, in the fall, is a lot of the Korn Ferry Tour graduates don't have a lot of PGA Tour rounds. But they certainly have, experience on the Korn Ferry Tour, have some stats from there. Not all of them. Korn Ferry Tour doesn't have a lot of shot link, so it's pretty limited. But we do have some information, so I want to make sure I gather what information I can, and to keep it uniform across both PGA Tour and Korn Ferry Tour. I've limited everything to the past 6 months, whether they're PGA or Korn Ferry, so that way we can at least somewhat look at similar data, at least similar in regards to the timeline. And then, sample size we can try to narrow down and get as close as we can between the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour, knowing that it's not an exact apples to apples. But anyway, that's the reasoning behind limiting it all samples to this last 6 months. Right now I just have it sorted on a strokes gained total basis for the past 36 rounds, PGA Tour only. And Louis Oosthuizen's your number one strokes gained total player. Probably no surprise. He's had a very good 2021 campaign, 2020 into 2021. Didn't win any majors, but was in the top 5 seemingly. Maybe he was in all 4. I can't quite remember. I know he was in 3. Just played some fantastic golf. So again, no surprise there. Seamus Power, Victor Hovland, Abraham Answer, and Harris English round out the top 5. Then Poulter, Scheffler, Mito Pereira, Hank Lebioda, and Paul Casey are the top 10. So a couple of names that you might not think about when you're talking on a strokes gained total for only the PGA Tour. The one that kind of, there's actually 2 that kind of surprised me. Ian Poulter being number 6 in strokes gained total over the past 36 rounds. But you come back and look at it, I mean, he was pretty darn good at the Northern Trust. He top 10 at the WGC St. Jude. Almost a top 25 at the Open. But you look at these strokes gained total numbers, you can kind of see why. You can kind of see he's been on a very good run lately. Ryder Cup notwithstanding, which don't get factored into these, ratings and all that for Fantasy National. He's had a very good run of it lately. So when you dig into it, yes, his off the tee game is suspect, we'll say, or middling, but everything else, I mean, he's always been a very good putter. His around the green game has improved. He's not going to wow you with his approach or his irons, but they're consistent eth. So he's been pretty darn solid. And when you look back into it, so maybe I shouldn't be all that surprised. Mito Pereira wasn't so much a surprise as much as that he is. I mean, it's just a highlight of how good he was in 2021 when he did come up from the Korn Ferry Tour. And again, this is including the 2 fall events. So, he made the cut at the Sanderson Farms, played okay, didn't really putt a lick. But, you third at the Fortinet, the first event of the year. He missed the cut at the Wyndham, but, a 3M, which is a full field event, 3M, top 10. Barbasol, granted, it's an alternate field event the week of the Open Championship, still top 5. Made the cut at the John Deere. He did miss the Rocket Mortgage in Puerto Rico, but look at the stats from the Korn Ferry Tour. I mean, a first, a ninth, a second. This guy can play. This guy can really play. And he represented Chile in the Olympics. This guy can play some golf. I am very high on Mito Pereira throughout this entire year. I think he's going to be a breakout. So I don't know if you heard it here first or whatever, but you can expect me to hype Mito Pereira, be the hype man on that train, if you will, this season. And then lastly, the one that surprised me the most was Hank Lebioda. Hank Lebioda, considering his finishing run here of 3 straight miscuts, the Fortinet, the first event of the new season, didn't play particularly well. He was actually hitting his irons pretty darn good that week. Uncharacteristically, lost some strokes on the green. Northern Trust, he was just bad. He was just bad all the way around. The Wyndham, he was okay. He missed the cut, but I mean, he was field average essentially. But you come here and you see 3 straight top 10s, top 30 essentially in the Palmetto, another top 20 in the Byron Nelson. I don't think people realize how much of a heater Hank Lebioda was on towards the end of the season. Now, certainly the Fortinet, it's not a ringing endorsement, but he did have a month off. He took, he's had a couple of weeks off again, so he might have some rust. But I really like Hank Lebioda this week, and you'll see more why in the data, as we get into the show in the data. But his preferred surface is bent. He's generally a pretty good putter, or at least he has been in his past 10 to 20 events. So these are a little bit of some outliers. Now, I don't think he's 5 strokes, 6 strokes, 6 strokes, 4. I don't think he's that high of a putter. So this probably comes down to the regression of maybe 2, 1.5, 2, 2.5. But even so, that's still, if he's, as long as he's hitting his irons the way he has been, there's a lot to like here with Hank Lebiota. And seeing him in top 10, ninth to be precise, in strokes gained total over the last 6 months, or 36 rounds measured in 6 months, it's surprising